I think we're live. Hello and welcome back to Happy Hour. I used to say so much. Hello and welcome back to the Let's Backflip Show. And these are actually getting turned into podcasts for the Let's Backflip Show. So, I mean, it kind of works. But hello and welcome back to another Happy Hour. I'm Ryan Fring, creative director here at Backflip. And joining me, as always, is my bro, John Shoemaker, other creative director. Say, hey, John.
Hello.
I'm here. My audio switched over here now.
I'm breaking things. Oh, sorry. I messed that up. I told you I was. Let's see here.
So this has been really fun. So our guest, Michael, will be here shortly. I was at home and my internet went out about 15 minutes ago. And so I ran back into work and was jumping on. And Michael has a call at 5:30 with the producer that he pushed up and took now. So we're just starting off without our guest because John was telling me about all the woes he's been having. And I was like, you know what? Let's get this on the show. Let's talk about what it's like to stream. Yeah. So why don't you start at the beginning?
You've got my audio now. It's good.
I have your audio. Oh. It's coming through the wrong speaker for me. So
it's because I broke everything. So I've been breaking stuff today. So I was working from home today and I was trying to set up, like, you know what? I'm going to set up a nicer setup. Actually, you can see, because I'm wearing my glasses,
the ring light.
I've got a light right there. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna run stuff through this camera. Let's see if I can get it. Cord's not long enough. This guy. There it is. So I was going to run stuff through that camera. Thought that might be fun. And
you know what? We didn't see it because it was not in the 2-shot or whatever.
Oh, let's see here. Okay.
There you go. Now you're bigger.
I'm going to run stuff.
There it is. There's history with that. The XHA1.
I've got that. And I was like, hey, I might as well use this thing. So got another computer here under the desk with a FireWire connection in the back, which is what that camera sends. That's an older format, an older way of doing things. Nobody even knows about it. That camera uses these things, tape. So I connected that, and there's different programs on that computer that can see that camera source, but not all of them. And so I tried it in like Skype and in Zoom, and Zoom could see the camera in the list when you pop down video source, but I could select the camera and then nothing would come through. And then Skype could see the camera in a different way, and it called it something else. But I knew it was that camera because it had like a DV control. Like I could hit record and like fire up the deck to like start the tape deck of the camera.
Sure.
So it actually had that kind of control of the camera, but not.
Which is very strange.
Yeah, but not pulling the video source. And then I was trying to read, and like, there's nothing.
Did you say it's over FireWire?
Yeah.
So your PC has FireWire right now.
Yes, correct.
That's awesome.
So I was trying to read stuff. There's like nothing out there because nobody uses this stuff anymore. You know, it's just easier to just get something that works. But that's like, I don't know. I was determined. And I have not succeeded yet, but I'm close because VLC would open the would open the camera stream, and I could see the image, but it was a little delayed
on VLC. Yeah.
It was a little delayed, and I was like, that just means it's not going to work anyway. It's probably going to be delayed.
Yeah.
But then I was like, okay, so now I have that. I'm looking up here because I just installed a new screen on a arm up there. So for that other
Nice.
computer. So it was a good little afternoon. I've been like had been in this office over the work from home COVID summer, and I like didn't do anything in here, I guess because I was trying to get other things done. And then today I was just like, I need to like get some of this stuff set up.
Yeah. So that's been kind of like my setup too, with the extra screen, which is nice. I don't have FireWire though. I'm curious too, just with that old technology. I guess VLC, you could get it in there, and you could probably send what the heck is that called? NDI. You could probably send an NDI signal from VLC.
I think that's what
Zoom.
I think that's what the final. I didn't get that far, but I think that's what the final resolution could be. Somebody suggested. Well, some of these people too are working on Linux, which I've played around with a little bit, but like nothing serious. I'm just like, I don't know if I want to do that right now.
Yeah, and you can do it all on Linux, but I saw how to like install DaVinci Resolve on Linux, and I was like, woof, I don't want to do that. I'm happy on Windows and PC or Mac.
Yeah, so I think there was a solution that seemed like what I had stumbled my way into, which I was getting close to, which was like something with NDI, putting a plugin into VLC that does something with NDI, and then because I was like, well, maybe these other things like OBS or whatever. So I was trying to like look up that stuff too, and I just like, you can see the source, but it just can't. And I think, I think the other problem is that I don't know. I didn't think there was anything wrong with FireWire, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of support for that, because that was this old way of like capturing video in a very specific way, because lots and lots of people have answers to this question that involve essentially either a capture card or some sort of device that is basically a dongle version of a capture card. So it's like, it's like, okay, yeah, I know that if I sent the video out signal into something and captured that would work, but there's also there's a video out that goes through FireWire in theory.
Well, I wonder too with FireWire if that was a very proprietary format, right? Because it's pretty dang fast. I'm just looking this up. It does 6 gigabits per second. USB 3 is 5, and then USB 3.1 is 10. Thunderbolt's like 40, so it's tons more. But 6 gigabits per second is nothing to shake a stick at. So I wonder if it was just more proprietary, or it cost a lot to license, because I know that licenses with ProRes, for instance, you can't render to ProRes on a Windows machine. That's stupid. Licensing, they didn't sell the license to Microsoft for rendering or whatever. So I wonder if that's what it was.
I guess that's something I would not have even thought of. It wouldn't have occurred to me to think about licensing, but that's probably true.
Like if you don't become the main format for like hard drives, also you're frozen like this. I don't know if you can see me.
I can see you.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe if I turn you off and turn you back on.
Let's see here.
There we go. That actually worked.
I'm just checking Facebook real quick. Are we streaming there?
We were. Are we not? That'd be awesome if we weren't.
Oh no, we are. We're good. Sorry.
Okay. No, this is great, guys. We're professionals.
Well, it's different than. I was kind of thinking about this too. Like it's different than working on a client project where we spend like a whole day or like 2 days ahead of time messing with this stuff. And then on days when we do the stream, it's like we do something else all day.
Nice.
And then like, 30 minutes, 45 minutes before and we start poking around at the computers, and it's like, things aren't working again.
I know, yeah. It was
like,
funny. 15 minutes before we're supposed to go live, for those just joining us, including Michael, who just logged in, and looks like we got Brent and Aaron on the line, on the chat. 15 minutes before, my internet at home went down, which is where I like to cast on Fridays because I like to be home. So we're like, crap. I was like, I'm going in. Tell Michael, because I didn't have Restream connected, and since it was about 2 minutes till, I opened up my email. Michael's like, or it was maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes before. He's like, hey, I have a call at 5:30. I'm going to take this producer call real quick since you guys are still figuring it out. I was like, all right, good. So we still took a little while to get live, but we went live, and we're talking about all of our streaming troubles. But the good news is Michael is now here, so we can bring on the main attraction. Let me get rid of that right there. There we go. And this will be super fresh. Can you hear us, Michael?
I can hear you guys.
hey, great.
We're doing well. How are you doing, man?
Good. I apologize. I live out in the country, and I need federal infrastructure out here, man. I have streaming issues.
Yeah, did you sign up for your space internet? What's that called? The Tesla internet from Elon Musk. It's like $99 a month, and you get satellite.
Oh,
internet.
really?
That's I don't know, 100 megabits per second or something.
See, as soon as you said Elon Musk, everything froze.
He's listening.
Yeah, you don't have or you must have the Bill Gates chip if it froze when I said Elon. Yeah, I must still be frozen.
You're gone.
Could be.
Elon Musk killed the line.
That's the best part. The best part is that we can still hear you.
My in-laws are actually signed up, like pre-signed up for SpaceX. No, not SpaceX. What's it called?
SpaceLink.
Skylink.
Yeah. Skylink.
Skynet.
Yeah. We got there.
Skynet. Uh-oh.
Yeah, no, I think it's built on AI. So I actually saw a piece of marketing today in like Instagram that was like, this marketing copy was written entirely by an AI. And then I read it and I was like, wow, that's pretty good copy. Where do I sign up?
Yikes.
Yeah.
Bad.
So, I mean, we literally just jumped on. What's happening? How's it going, man?
Good. You keep cutting it out, so I apologize. All I heard was Skynet and then family, and I'm like, I hope your family is okay. I hope they're not being held hostage by Terminator Church. So
yes.
Again,
so far, so good. I mean, if there's a Sarah Connor here, I'll type in the chat for you too. Let's see. Yeah, no, like it's been a few months since we talked last, and we're working on a public awareness campaign on human trafficking, and there's a big indigenous people's component of that. Oh, we lost him. We'll join him back in. Guys, this is the best one yet.
Yeah. You know what happened was that we went to actual happy hour time, 4 p.m. on a Friday.
Yeah.
When everybody else just stops working and they just start streaming video from their computers as well.
That's true. I'm watching 3 screens of Netflix. It's not helping.
Yeah.
Are you back?
I'm here. I think I'm here.
I think so.
I didn't leave. I'm still sitting here.
Yeah, so the question was, because Skynet is now taking over, how's your family?
My family. Again, I'm so far out in the country, man. I'm like ahead of Sarah Connor, man. It's like she had to go and drive to the desert. I'm in a desert. Well, a digital desert.
Yeah.
So,
no, that's great. We haven't talked in a few months. How's it been? How's work been?
It's been very surprisingly busy. We talked in the fall, and right at the end of the year, the International Screenwriter Association named me one of their top 25 screenwriters to watch in 2021. and
Oh, wow.
it's been pretty cool.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And I just found out.
We're waiting with beta.
International
We lost you there for a
series,
second.
I think it's Fast Track.
You just found out what?
Hello.
Oh, no.
Hello.
Oh, yeah.
Testing 1 2 1 2. Testing 1 2. Sibilance.
Got you back.
We got you.
Does this go to 11?
Brent says
So
the suspense is killing him.
so I'm a. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe I should turn off the. I do have a face for radio. Maybe that'll help the feed.
Yeah, I could throw up. Yeah, I can throw up a picture or something.
Yeah, that might help. My mom always said there's two kind of babies in the world, and she said there are little babies that are born, they're just so adorable, and unfortunately they grow up to be really ugly adults. And she goes, there's really ugly babies that grow up to be really, really pretty beautiful adults. And she goes, Mike, you were the most beautiful baby.
You're like, come on, Mom, I haven't even peaked yet.
Come on, throw me a bone.
Give me a chance. Yeah, no, and we can hear you loud and clear, so I think that kind of worked.
Good. Okay. I found out I'm a finalist for a Fast Track writing fellowship. And I think I'll find out within the next week whether I get that or not. And then I also found out I'm a finalist for Fresh Voices screenwriting competition for their action adventure genre from my script Pick It Charlie. And also, they put me up for a Spotlight Award for best lead role written for a woman. So I'm
Wow.
pretty excited about that. So I should know about. I think that comes out within the next couple of days, whether I have moved on to win or not. But no, it's been pretty good. It's been I've been working away. It's funny. I just my script Pick a Charlie that's been doing really well. I was talking to a producer in Hong Kong yesterday morning about it, and he's read it and he likes it. He likes the script, and we're having a creative Zoom meeting talking about the script. And then last night, I went and watched the new Godzilla versus Kong movie, and on HBO. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know that they're going to destroy Hong Kong. And I just talked to a guy there this morning, and it was kind of just a weird mind thing going. I met this producer on Zoom and even met his little boy, and now I'm like, nice. I wonder which one of these high rises they live in. It was pretty freaky.
Yeah, because they're coming down.
They're coming down.
No, that's awesome. I'm trying to think. When did you write Pick It Charlie? I've been
working
on one.
No, I don't know if we talked about it last time. I've been working on it for the past year, and it's what I've been working on. It came out. I'm right at the university at the UW Institute of Discovery, and part of their science to script program. And this is the script that's come out of that residency and that program. And over this last summer, they gave me all kinds of access to a lot of their scientists. And so it's a story that has a really strong climate change message. It's kind of like an Inconvenient Truth met First Blood. I wanted to message about climate change and kind of make it accessible to people that on the other side of the political spectrum that aren't necessarily interested in hearing anything about climate change. So I thought the best way to do it is to add lots of guns. So I told it's this action adventure, and and it's been getting really well received, and it's not so much science. It takes place 80 years from now, a dystopian near world future that's been ravaged by climate change and the melting of the Antarctic ice shelf, and it takes place in Chicago, the Chicago area. And it's about a forest ranger who has a woman that becomes a forest ranger, and she has to protect her island reserve of trees from these vicious timber pirates that are out to harvest the trees in this very dystopian near future world. And it's in my story, the Forestry Service has been militarized. I figure if Trump can make Space Force, I'm going to militarize the Forestry Service. And she's kind of like a commando stumpy forestry. Getting pretty good.
I love what you just said too. You said timber pirates. I don't know that I've ever heard that combination of words before, and it sounds so much fun.
Hello.
This is a winning combination. I think we learned it's a winning combination back when Captain Planet was a big deal. The combined action hero with Earth consciousness.
Social issue. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was so good. Let's see. I think I hear you talking. Yes. You can type and we can hear or we can see your typing. This is just the way it goes, folks. But yeah, I was looking. I think there's a page, the Blacklist, that lists several of these scripts, which is really fun. You can see a little bit more about that. Once we get Michael back,
you guys.
Can you hear me, John?
Yes, I can.
All right.
I don't know if you're still there.
Yeah. Maybe refresh the page. We'll try that. Dun, dun, dun. Anybody at home, you got questions for us while we're doing this, or questions for Michael, you can check him out. Let's see. He's got a website. I had just pulled it up. I'll find. Oh, Spot Filmworks is his company, so you can see more about him there. Also, the writers.coverfly.com/profile/Michael Graf. If you just Google search Michael Graf writer, several of his pages will come up, but you can see the scripts that we're talking about as well. Let's see. I think we've maybe got you back. Maybe. Hello, Clarice.
This is the dystopian future.
Yeah.
See, this is what I get for making wisecracks about Skynet.
There you go. Can you hear us?
I can hear you now.
Awesome. We'll just keep doing this and telling fun stories if you happen to have to reset.
This is the dystopian future, I think, I'm not anti-technology, but the more that we push into like everything being online and relying on these connections, the dystopian future is actually just the frustration of being isolated and sitting here and fighting to try to talk to people.
Yeah. It's where you're forced to, you're locked down in your home for no good reason, and you have to be on Zoom calls, and the internet's not working.
Right.
That literally happened at my house. The internet was not working, so I had to come here.
Yes.
It's been a fun journey. But all right, so back to your scripts. I'm really curious. So you just wrote that. Oh my gosh. I was just on that page. What the name of that script?
I lost you. I like when you said you.
Pick it, Charlie. Can you hear me? You just wrote Pick it, Charlie. Pick it, Charlie. We will write it. If you can't hear it, I can't
hear you anymore.
Hear us. We'll just talk about it. Maybe try on a phone. Maybe that'll work. Maybe try on your phone. Maybe the LTE is better. I don't know. I'm really curious once we get him back. Like once you write a script.
Now you're back.
Oh, cool. I'm curious when you, with like Pick a Charlie, when you write a script, what do you do next? You know, it sounds like it's getting noticed. So you're sending it out? Are you
I didn't hear a
submitting
word
it?
you said.
Oh, no.
It came across.
I don't know.
I could call in.
Yes. How can we make that work? Oh, I got it. I'll send a Zoom link. I think I can pull him in through Zoom. Okay. So John, why don't you talk about screenwriting?
Well, I do a little bit of screenwriting. I don't have the level of experience that Michael has of feature length things, but let's tie it to features. So we write a lot of short form stuff for commercials and like promo videos for businesses, but we do have a feature length documentary, very different than fictional screenwriting, but there are similarities. You know, you're still looking for character arc, still looking for drama, but you're doing it with material that is already done for you. Hey, there's Michael again.
Yeah. So on the first screen that pops up on my phone, mobile device support is limited. Switch to a desktop computer for the best experience. I'm like,
yeah, this seems solid. Can you still hear us?
yeah, I can.
Okay.
Hear you. I'm gonna set this down so it's not shaky cam.
Cool. Yeah, no. So the question that I was trying to ask with Pick a Charlie and just all your scripts, it sounds like they get noticed, they get recognition. So after you write something, what do you do with it? Are you submitting it to things, or how are people finding it?
Yeah. So I, that's kind of a disadvantage for not living in a bigger market is access, and so but the pandemic driving everything digital has been a little bit, ironically, since we have a hard time connecting, a little bit of a blessing in that producers and managers and people looking for content in Los Angeles are much more open to taking Skype calls and Zoom meetings now than they were over a year ago. So and even though production was in a standstill for a year, everyone was still reading. So producers were still reading. They were still looking to gear up for after the pandemic was over. So like I've done what there's like all of the pitch festivals and all of the film festival events that were created to put producers and writers together. It's all gone online now. So I am very, very good at my virtual pitching. So this aside, I mean, but yeah. So it's 2 weeks ago I was pitching to a handful of producers as part of Faden Magazine's virtual pitch fest, and there were some really good companies there. I mean, one of the companies that I pitched to I pitched to the head of development at MGM, and he was really intrigued with Pick a Charlie and wanted to read it, asked to read it, so he's got it right now. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. See what happens.
Very cool. So you kind of already had connections to either these people or some organizations that could help get your script out there. Yeah,
and I've kind of been using what I have available to me, being here in the Midwest, and I kind of use the film festivals and screenwriting festivals and try to use that to manage, and so like the screenwriting festivals, there's maybe a half dozen that are really reputable festivals that producers pay attention to. One of them is Fresh Voices, the one that I'm a finalist in.
Sure.
And so I kind of use those festivals strategically and make sure I enter my work there. And it does get noticed if you advance into the semifinal. You know, if you advance up from quarterfinal, a semifinal, finalist, and winner, you do get noticed, and you do get meetings out of that. And even some of the writing fellowships and stuff. I was for 2 other projects. I won writing fellowships down in the Bahamas, the Bahamas International Film Festival. And,
wow.
And those that was amazing because they fly you down and you spend a week on an island with 4 other writers and 5 producers, and all you do is talk story in your projects. And you're on an island; no one can go anywhere. So it's a great environment, and it's a great way to network and get to know other writers and other and producers. And matter of fact, I kind of use those relationships and kind of networked out from there. So yeah, it's been really good.
Oh man, that sounds amazing. And your script. Oh, by the way, let's do that, and then I'll talk about my my question. So this is a happy hour. We should be sharing what we're drinking. I had a client over, so I was drinking with the client. But I see you're arriving in style with the Labatt's.
Labatt's.
That's my brother-in-law's favorite beer. When he comes up here, we'll have beer, and he just buys himself his own case. It's amazing. So, I mean, now we'll get it.
I grew up right on the Canadian border. I'm from Buffalo, Niagara Falls area, so so Labatt's was like the beer of choice in our family.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of labeled, it's branded as a more fancier cheap beer, but it's funny because it's my brother-in-law from Georgia, you know, and maybe it's just not as popular down there, but he always gets it when he comes up. It's fantastic.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So I was drinking earlier with a client, so I'm not drinking booze today, but I'm drinking everything else. I've got little energy drink here. Let me pull it up. Just because I like my mind to work on these happy hours, so I can remember crap. Got water, and then I got a little gruel to help me grow up big and strong.
Nice.
Yeah. What do you got, John?
I run next the liquor store, which is in the utility room. There's a little fridge. And I don't even know what I have. I've got Tyrannina, Rocky's Revenge.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
It's a brown ale.
Yeah.
That'll put hair on your toes.
It's quite good.
That's just where you want them.
Yeah. That's and I happen to have this because an audio guy we were working with gave the office a pack of beer after our last thing, but nobody else was there. It was just he and I packing things up, and he was like handing it to me in the parking lot. I was like, "Oh, thank you," and I just put it in my car and I brought it home. So
you're like, I deserve this.
Nothing but you're going down in a parking lot.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. So my question was it one of these scripts? Was it Pick a Charlie or Last Indian War that had won a festival that got you the trips to the Bahamas for those writing fellowships, or how did that work out?
Yeah, it was The Last Indian War was the first one, and then a script called Throwing Hammers that's in development. Producer in New York is was the second project, and they were kind of back to back. Was it back to back? It was. There was a 1 year in between, but yeah, it was pretty cool.
So it seems like you're just, not cranking out in a bad way, but like you have new scripts, right? So I know you were talking about The Last Indian War for a while, but now it seems like you have a couple more. Do you we talked about this last time. Do you think of yourself more as a writer now? And especially now that you're talking to people?
Yeah, it depends on who I'm talking to. If it's film producers, I've been pitching myself more as a writer, but I make sure I let them know that I'm also I've been a commercial director, and in the Directors Guild, I kind of work that into. I slipped that into the conversation.
No big deal.
Yeah, it's it was funny because when I wrote Last Indian War, I spent a lot of time kind of championing that one script when I had the free time, and I would, as I've talked to other screenwriters, it's kind of like the natural impulse is to like take that one project and champion it. And you hear all the time about how, oh, this, so and so film, it took 10 years to produce, or this guy spent a lifetime getting it produced. And I used to think that was like kind of once in a that was kind of a rare event, but it's actually pretty standard operating procedure. It takes a long time to develop something. And I've discovered over the last year or so, from talking to people on the business side, managers and consultants and producers, that that's actually a bad strategy. They've all recommended, if you are going to write as much as you can, and just take the try to produce as much content as possible. And they said there's two things that'll happen. It's when you do start talking to producers, you can start talking about multiple projects, and they might not be interested in what you're originally pitching, but I'd say 50% of the time they go, "That's great. Do you have anything else?" And it's a great opportunity to go, "Oh, well, here's another, here's something else I'm working on, or here's something that just won an award." It's always nice to have something else in your back pocket. So that's been a really good kind of eye opener for me, and good encouragement for me to continue to write. So I've been kind of building my library of material for the past year.
Yeah, no, and I've definitely heard that too. We have a friend who's a writer who wrote something, and we produced it, and it was kind of his baby, and it's been 8 years, and then now he's been writing professionally and editing for a year or two. But he did kind of go from having that baby to have just continually writing and having multiple, and multiple writing partners, and having different completely different kinds. And he's found too exactly what you're saying when you're talking about one script. Somebody's and even if somebody reads it and they're like, maybe this one's not quite for me, do you got anything else? And you're like, well, I got this football Native American historical drama. They're like, ooh, tell me about that one. So I mean, that kind of gets back to that idea, that core that we've talked about before, of like, just get out there and do it and create. And I just love hearing more of those stories that kind of confirm what I hear over and over and over again.
It gets you out of constraints.
Definitely put it. Yeah, definitely put it out. I mean, that's a big thing. Like if you want to be put it out to the universe that you're a writer and write.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was going to say that it, gets you out of the constraints and out of that, in the box kind of thinking where, even on small projects, on like commercial promotional things, sometimes you're writing, one script that you think is.
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us? It's the waves of Skynet.
A little bit.
We can hear you. Yeah, just a smidge.
Sometimes just a concept that you think is really, really great, but you just have to write multiple for options, on like a commercial job or something, and then sometimes you'll stumble onto something that is really great that you weren't expecting, that's even better than you thought it was going to be. So,
yeah, and I think that's important. It encourages me to write too. There's several projects that we've talked about, and like I think it's good because we've built them up into maybe something more than they are. And in reality, what we want to do is just create it, get it out there, and move on to the next thing. And then maybe we can come back, maybe we can work on that, but not to make one thing, one story into the only story that you can tell.
Mm-hmm. And you could certainly have your thing that you're really passionate about that you don't want to just let go and move on from, but kind of similar to the story that Michael's been telling, like you could keep that project going in the background while you're moving on with other things.
Right. Yeah, I think that's kind of what it is. Like maybe, I mean, you don't give up on it, but you move forward with other projects. Cause like, TC, that happened to him where he's talking about one project and they're like, he actually had a finished film and they're like, oh yeah, this isn't quite what we're looking for. Do you have anything else? And then he told them, they actually made it in like 9 days and like, oh, that's really interesting to me. Tell me more about that. So it's not necessarily that one thing that you think might be most important. It's the thing that eventually somebody else does. Yeah. So I'm going to send
Skynet got him.
Yeah. I'm going to send Michael a link to call in on Skype, and maybe we could just do like a call in. Let's see. Does Skype do call ins? Oh,
I think this
maybe it's got to be Zoom. I just don't know how to get the phone call in here. I think Zoom. Why don't you talk about something awesome? We've got 3 people. 3 people who are on. What do you want us to talk about?
Yeah, I'm looking at you, Brent and Aaron. Is that Aaron who is always chatting with us on YouTube?
Yeah, our good boy. I don't know if he's there though, because I think we went down to 0, and then now there's some other people back.
Yeah. Someday this post-apocalyptic show about trying to struggle your way through a video call. It's gonna happen. It's gonna be horrifying though. It's gonna be too scary for anyone to watch.
Perfect. Let's see. Can I do Zoom? I think I can do Zoom. Yeah, so what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to create a Zoom, send it to Michael. Hopefully he can call in.
And you have to connect that. There we go. Oh, it's Luke. He's got how many more guitars can you fit on the wall behind you, John? Thank you for that filler question, Luke. You know what? There's only 2 guitars behind me on the wall. There's 3 guitars on the wall.
You rube.
I don't know. I mean, you could maybe that could be a competition where we see who can guess how many more guitars. We just have these. I mean, it's not like I don't play them all at the same time. That's for sure. And then some of these, I think this light colored one right here is more of a toy than anything. It's kind of a cheapo ukulele that doesn't work very well. This nice brown one, that one actually sounds really nice. That's kind of a nice ukulele. I'm not very good at playing it. And then we've got Amanda's Optimistic Project number 1 and Amanda's Optimistic Project number 2. And
here we go. Let's see. Can you hear me?
All these.
All right, we're gonna try.
Oh, Ryan.
If this doesn't work, just use the call-in number. Yeah, sorry, I've got Michael over here.
He's
because the internet seems to be the problem. Yeah, here. Okay, sorry, John. You talk.
No, it's all right. It's all right. I was just vamping anyway. It's kind of amazing if anyone stays with it it's just Luke. This is basically me and Luke having a conversation, which we could just be having at work, but we're doing it live so that everybody else can participate. Anyway, like I said, there's a lot of hopeful projects on the wall back here. Amanda, see, this is what it is. This is accountability from the public that is watching this podcast. You can hold Amanda, my wife, to this. She's supposed to learn to play violin and this guitar right here. That's at least two of the things that are hanging on the wall. And then we've got an electric guitar right here. This is my dad's electric. It looks a lot like a Gibson, but it's not. It's like an off-brand, but it's from like the 70s. So it has a really nice sound, and he set it up really nicely. So that's what's going on behind me. Ryan's gone silent, so now I just got to talk and hear the sound of my own voice. Let's see. We can talk about scripts some more. Yes, Luke, my dad played guitar. He was in a band that didn't tour, but they played a lot of different like bars and restaurants and things like that for a bunch of years, just kind of a side thing. I have a very distant, fading memory of being in some sort of like basement and watching them set up. Maybe that was a basement of like a bar or a restaurant where there was like going to be a live show. It could have been a practice. I'm not really sure. I was very young, and it's like one of those, fading memories that's in there. But yeah, so I picked it up from there. For those who are just joining us, I am not Michael Graf, writer and director. Michael Graf, writer and director, is attempting to get connected right now with Ryan via some other method, because internet connections are not happy today, especially for those who live out in the country. Could be due to the weather. It's a little cold and a little cloudy, which isn't always good for the signal. I guess it wouldn't matter if you have a wired signal.
Okay.
This might work.
Let's see. Let's try
that.
It echoes me. Hang on. I got to figure out how not to echo me. Let's see. Guys, this is bleeding edge technology.
Yes.
It's so bleeding edge. It sucks.
I think I started bleeding internally during that last vamp.
There we go. Maybe I'll just be delayed, and I will have to hear myself delayed, but that's fine because then Michael's here and I can hear Michael.
Oh yeah.
You're coming through loud and clear.
Great. All right, let me do this. Sorry, you can go ahead. John, ask the question that you were going to ask.
Oh man, I got to go many vamps back for that. I got to rewind my
only
train
see
of.
Ryan. I don't have John.
Oh, maybe he can only hear you through Zoom.
Okay. Yeah, I stopped talking for a second. You should be able to hear me now, right?
I can hear you, but I'm saying Michael might only be able to hear you and see you through Zoom.
God.
He can only hear me. He says.
I'm assuming it's Ryan. I have a picture of Ryan.
Yeah. Oh yeah, let's see. So mine. Let's see if I can do my video being. Yeah. Okay, you'll just have to listen to me, and I will forward John's questions.
Okay.
If this is how it's going to work, what we're going to do.
Well, we can. Anything else? We
all
can
right.
finish out our conversation.
John question.
With Michael and kind of get the updates on what we were trying to hear before. I'll work my way back toward the Shane, thank you. He says we hear Ryan's echo. So
this is what happens to the internet when you don't let any UW college students go on spring break.
It's true. It's true that they all just went. They're watching videos right now. It's a Friday afternoon, and they're tanking the internet.
There we go. I think you shouldn't hear my echo now. You'll just hear it once.
I do not hear any echo from you.
Michael can hear it.
So anyway, I am done vamping.
I wasn't hearing any echo.
Yeah, I'll see if I can get that train of thought back, Ryan. But go ahead and take Michael back into the last point he left off on, if we can remember.
Yeah. So, we were kind of talking about submitting to festivals and the fellowships and the writing and stuff. That's all awesome. What's been the challenge? Like, what's your challenge, or what's your method? Are you just furiously writing all the time, or what are you up to?
The writing isn't the challenge. That's my little slice of heaven. I like writing a lot. And I try to sometimes it's hard, but I try to carve out, at least 2 or 3 hours a day just to write. And saving grace through this pandemic. Yeah, so that's been that's been the saving grace. The thing that's hard is just networking. Is just kind of getting very busy people, in Los Angeles or New York to get them to give you their attention for a little bit. But yeah, so the festivals is the one thing. But you asked me, like, what have I been up to? That's just, I've been commissioned to write a screenplay by a producer in Chicago, and some producers. I'm talking to some producers in Denver who want me to rewrite an existing property that they have. So I've actually have been busy, and I was in Iowa last month, and I directed a commercial campaign for the Iowa lottery. So it's been busy.
Oh yeah. How'd that go with travel and COVID and just everything?
It went well. The company had been bitten. The production company it was an Iowa production company, and they had been bitten by COVID in the fall and had to shut a project down. So they were very sensitive to it. And the talent all came from Chicago, and none of the talent was even allowed to get on an airplane until everyone had tested negative, and the crew everyone involved in the project had to test, had to go and get tested first. And but it was fun. It was a really fun project, and the folks at the lottery seem really happy with it. And I'm not sure if it's airing yet, but it was a fun project.
Yeah, I'm super curious with that type of thing too. Sorry, let me do this. It's hard when you have a 1 second delay on your what you're saying. I'm super curious. How does that, is that a good break from your writing? How do you balance all of that? Because like you said, you like to write for several hours a day. Obviously, commercial directing project, you have maybe 1 or 2 shoot days, but there's a lot of prep. There's, so much leading up to it, and then editing afterwards. So is that disruptive, or how do you factor that in?
Yeah, it was very disruptive. It really threw me off my game. It's weird. It threw me off my writing game, but it also kind of threw me off some of the pre-pro time too, because it took me actually, it was more on the writing side than the directing. What was really interesting, I think writing has made me a better director, because when casting, going through the casting process with the actors, it was actually really, I spent a little bit more time than I normally have in the past, but it was really fun to get into talking about not just the dialogue on the page, but with not without with the actors that we ended up casting, but just a little bit more about subtext and story and things like that. Even though it was a 30-second commercial, it was still fun to kind of have that conversation, and it kind of it's been so interesting talking to producers about for long format storytelling, and you get into these conversations about what's your voice as a writer, and what's the voice of the project, and what's the spine of the story, and all that, and just taking that and applying that to the commercial work. Sometimes it can be easy to sometimes you can fall into the trap of and maybe that's not the right word, falling into a trap, but when you're so focused, when it's work for hire and you're hired by a client with a certain set of expectations, and an ad agency with a certain set of expectations, and there's the politics involved that you're trying to navigate, and you want to make sure everyone's happy, and you want to make sure you're still honoring the creative, but you're getting you're dealing with people with different agendas and things like that. And sometimes bringing your own unique voice and defending the spine of the creative can get lost in that, or get diminished a little bit. And it was interesting because a little bit of that went on with this project, and it was interesting to kind of reassert my voice as a creative into the process. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but it was interesting. It was, I think it made the process better.
Yeah. No, and we talk about writing as or directing as a writer, directing as an editor, directing as a cinematographer, because there's all those elements of those other fields that can really strengthen a director, and especially writer directors. Are some of my favorites because of that. Maybe that level of detail that they can get into with a character that another director taking that material can't do in the same way. So, yeah, I think that's a really fun thing to hear, and I'm curious to see how that develops over the years as you are writing more and bringing that into your directing, and becoming maybe like more of an actor's director, or just understanding that depth of the character that coming in as a director and taking on somebody else's project, you might not naturally get as far down in the understanding of those characters.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, because it's nice to exercise those muscles, because it's because so much of the work in the commercial world, you're dealing with creative that somebody else wrote. So it's but to kind of bring a writer's appreciation for the word, it coming in, it's just a production person, it's just a director. It kind of, it makes the conversation with the agency creative team, specifically the writer, or if the creative director is like a writer creative director and not an art director creative director, it makes that conversation, I think, a little bit more valuable.
Mm-hmm. And I do have John's question. I know you can't hear him, but he was saying, out of the box thinking. Can you talk more about the out of the box thinking that can happen when you're actually working on multiple scripts, as opposed to just having one script or one piece of content in your head that you're working on, or that you're professionally working on? You're working on multiple. Do they feed into each other? Do they ever poison each other? Like,
I've been really scared like that. I've been like really wanting to like focus on one project, write that, get that done, not have the thought process corrupted by other things, and focus on this, and then move on to the next project. And for the last couple of months, I haven't, I've been kind of forced by my timeline and schedules and stuff to kind of ping pong back and forth. And, I've been doing a rewrite on Picket Charlie. We did a table read with some local actors at the university in January, I think. Yeah, it was late January. And based on that table read, I went back and wanted to change and rewrite some things, and then some notes I've been getting. So I've been ping-ponging back and forth between rewriting that, which is an action thriller, and this project that I'm doing a rewrite on is more of a dramedy. And having to switch gears from action adventure to dramatic comedy. And then I had also insanely started a new script, which is calling it a Northwoods noir. It's kind of a very noir, very dark noir story about a love triangle gone bad up in the North Woods. And it's like, that one I've kind of put off to the side until I finish this. I'm just not smart enough to be able to go back and do ping pong between three of them.
Yeah.
Two of them I can handle.
That idea of multitasking too. There's no real multitasking. There's just switching between tasks and not switching efficiently, right? So I imagine it can be the same. I guess I haven't done that type of. I guess I do that all the time with multiple projects, but not in writing. And so I try to not be in the office and like, hey, don't bother me today. I got to work on this one project.
And that's kind of the nice thing that's kind of come out of like having worked for years and years in the advertising business, where if you're working on one project and you might be pitching another project or talking to a client about another project or doing a director's treatment for another, it's like so there's a little bit of that discipline that at least I've picked up over the years to be able to do that once or twice. But I'm not the smartest guy in the room most of the time. So it's like, okay, 2 projects I can handle. 3, all of a sudden it's like everything just kind of shuts down. So
I'm curious. I want to hear too. You mentioned like what did you say, like neo-North noir or something? Like your genres are just like nuts. Like what's the through point that is Michael? Like what is your tone in all these things? Or
I am a little schizo. I like the stories I'm drawn to. I love film noir. The first thing I ever wrote that was produced was kind of a film noir love story. And then I love the genre. I just love kind of the idea of a story about the everyman that just can't get a break, no matter what he does. And so that's been really attractive to me. But that said, I also am a sucker for like Pollyanna, happy ending, feel good, big studio type films too. Mm-hmm. So it's like I'm a little schizo that way. So I kind of am attracted to both. And then I like comedy. I think I'm a better director of comedy than a writer of comedy. But anything, if I can, I think what I've tried to do is bring some kind of my own personal style because I have lived in comedy for a little bit. I try to bring that in as a layer to some of the darker stories. I think it helps round out the characters, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. But yeah, different genres. I really try to write within genres. The thing that I will always stay away from is horror. I don't like horror only for the reason that I get I'm too easily scared, so I try to stay away from that. But the producer that I've been talking to a producer that wants me to write a horror. The guy down in Chicago, he wants me to rewrite a horror script, and I kept telling him, I'm like, I am not the guy to do that. And he goes, you're exactly the guy. He goes, the fact that you don't write within that genre, you're going to do something very different that's unexpected. So he kind of wore me down. And after he kept asking me, he's like, dude, I want you to write this. I want you to write this. I'm like, I'm not the guy. And he sent me kind of a treatment that somebody else had written. And I'm like, oh no. And it was just, it wasn't my cup of tea. And so he was like, well, what don't you like about it? And then we started talking about the story, and it's like, well, I would do this different, I don't believe that, and this, and then before I knew it, he's like, well, would you be interested in doing that? And I'm like, no. And then he came back, and he kept insisting. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
No, I think that's fantastic. Writing out of your comfort zone, helps you explore those things. But like you said, taking maybe your comedy chops, your commercial comedy chops, applying that to other genres, I imagine can at the very least just help you reflect on those things and look at them from a different angle, which, looking at things from a different perspective can be very, very helpful. I do have a question here from John, and I think actually he's going to jump on Zoom. He will come over here. It'll be great, and you'll be able to hear him. His question was about the flip side of
I just want to see him
task switching or script switching. Is there a benefit to being forced to switch off or on a script while working on something else?
I don't think so. I mean, is the benefit like part of the process? Is that the question?
I think I'm back into a conversation that we can have actually live. I think before, one of the things I was getting at was when you're forced. I'll say it as kind of an opinion I've had, and then just see, what you think about that. Because there's downsides of having to switch back and forth. That happens to us all the time. We're working on these short little projects. I can't dedicate huge amounts of time because it's going to shoot in a day, and then I've got overlapping things that are going on. But sometimes, you've maybe got your passion project, but you're talking about the benefit of just like writing and getting through a lot of content. And, I wonder if there's a benefit to having to move on from that sometimes, to like break outside of the, like, I'm so, head first in this one project, that I'm starting to like lose any other outside vision, and then having to like go to other things to work on stuff and kind of develop new ideas, and then come back to that can like freshen that up a little bit.
It definitely, I hear what you're saying. It does, like, I'll get really into a project. Well, first of all, I'm not just writing to write. I don't know. It's like I'll work on things that I feel really strongly about, or I feel that, because you got to live with it for a long time. Yeah. But like, to your point about like, does it adversely affect like the passion project that you're working on? It can. I think it does with me, and I've been fighting really hard to not do other things, and but it's like you got to find a balance, and I kind of look at like the years between writing Last Indian War and writing the next script, and I just like, now I'm like, oh, I think I wasted some time where I should have been able to find some balance where I can just go on to the next work on the next thing that I'm really interested in. My wife is an artist. She's a fine artist, and she paints. And one of the things I've learned from her, I mean, she paints every single day. And kind of medium, it's a medium, but like seeing her discipline of her painting every day and her subject matter changing, I think, you know, that's always kind of in the back of my mind, that, okay, I just need to figure out a way to keep this passion project and devote time to keep building momentum with that, but then find new time to go and devote to the next project that'll be a passion project. And it's hard. It's really hard. I'm sure for you guys, it's the same thing. It's got to be hard to find that kind of balance.
And maybe it is different intrinsically with long form versus shorter form, because I think what I've stumbled onto a few times just by accident is, you know, your shorter form projects, a lot of times you're pitching to a client and you've got to give them a couple options or something. And usually I have this sense of like the one that I really think is really good, really solid. But then just because of the demand of I need to generate, you know, another concept or two, I will stumble onto or be surprised by something, you know, that I wasn't real sure about at first as like an alternate, you know, concept. But then we're always attempting not to, I don't want any of them to be throwaway, because you just don't know. And you also don't want to get stuck if the client is like, yeah, I like that one. And you're like, oh, I hated that one.
That's happened.
Yeah. So I've just recently we had one that I was kind of writing what I thought was the alternate concept, and I actually ended up really liking it by the time I was done with it. And I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting to like this one. And so I guess it's just that sort of thing to me, is like sometimes, but again, maybe there's a difference between that longer form and shorter form, where it's just a different, you know, way of iterating.
It's like dating. It's like, you know, you think, you know, your first girlfriend, you think, man, this is awesome. This is great. And you don't want it to end, but then it might end. And the next girlfriend is great for a lot of other reasons. And it's, you know, it's that's all just part of the process. And I think it's good. I think what you like, the struggle that you have, I mean, at least for me, it's like, I think that that's really good. The fact that you care enough about what you're presenting, that it's like, it is, okay, here's not just one solid idea, here's three. Because yeah, I've been in that position where it's like there's two solid ideas and one that's not so solid. And that's the one the client picks. And then you gotta make that work. And it's, well, you know, it's much better to go in with ideas that you're passionate about. And also I think, like, if you're passionate about like that second idea, when you go in to pitch it, I think people pick up on the vibe of what you know, I think for the most part, at least I would like to think and hope that people pick up on what, you know, your personal excitement as you're pitching ideas, or at least ask you, like, what do you guys recommend? Because I think that makes a big difference too. But it's really good that you're able to go in with those kind of solid ideas.
I think it was interesting too, because we were talking about the creative and came up with the one idea, and we're like, oh yeah, this could work really well, and it's kind of the first idea that came. And then when we were brainstorming, we wanted to come up with a few more options. And I do remember saying that too, just being like, hey, let's find a second option that we would be proud of as well. You know, maybe it's not as favorite as the first, but as soon as that gets picked, then my mind kind of switches, and I'm kind of like, okay, this is now favorite. How do we figure out this one? And that's maybe an interesting difference between figuring out writing creative for a client or another brand, or coming up with it yourself in your own writing project. So I'm curious, like, in your mind, what's kind of the big benefit of coming up with your own material, or maybe a challenge in that regard?
Well, it's you definitely have ownership in it, and it's yours. It's not work. It ultimately isn't work for hire. It's ultimately work that you are kind of bringing to life and kind of shepherding forward. I mean, not that work for hire isn't, but the difference is when you are talking to a producer or somebody and getting notes about the creative, it's your decision whether to make those or not. It isn't so much if it's work for hire. We don't like that, change it. It's like it's a little it is a big difference in mindset. And it's like when I'm writing to please a client, I'm giving it 100% in trying to meet their initial objective in a creative way. But at the same day, time, like they know their brand better than I ever will, hopefully, in theory. But so you're like, you do have to listen to what they're saying. But with the story, it's like when it's your own story and it's IP, then it's like, okay, you're going to get, everyone has an opinion, but it's like you're in charge of developing that brand. The IP is its own brand and you're in charge of it. And that, I think, is it's very refreshing. Creatively, it's really refreshing to have that.
Yeah. Is that any bit scary or is it just all refreshing and feels great or seems great?
It's both. But it's more, I think it's maybe a pride thing, if you build your own deck or hire someone to do it, it's always means more if you built it yourself. So
yeah, I wonder if that makes it a little bit more difficult too, to then be told this is not great or this is not what we want. Do you have something else? You're like, oh, that's one of my babies. Okay. All right. I guess I've got, and at this point, you have several scripts. You're like, I guess I have some more. Please be gentle.
I think it's just like, after years and years in advertising, it's it's like of being told no or bidding something and you get it. That definitely becomes a really good piece of a good weapon in your defenses. It's good to have.
Yeah. Let's see. So we are live. I will remind anyone who's watching, please let us know if you have questions about writing. We're talking with Michael Graf, writer and director. You can check more information about him. I found some good stuff on the Blacklist. That seems to be a page that has kind of your movies, and I saw, or at least latest scripts, and I saw Throwing Hammers and Pick at Charlie, which I don't remember seeing the last time I looked. They could have been there. But there's more information on those movies. We're talking about writing, what it's like, pros, cons, lessons learned. So let us know if you have any questions down below. So I guess kind of another question along this line that I have is, what is your process? I know processes are great for habits, right? So in order to form habits, we got to do the same thing or similar things over and over again to get disciplined on something. So like, what have you found that works for you in order to, get shit done?
What works for me, I start my day going, I live in the country, so I start my day and I go on a walk. And I tend to get the best ideas or best slivers of dialogue when I'm on my walk and when I'm in the shower. So I'll do that. I kind of have made that part of my routine. I do that in the morning, and then I try to write it's weird because a lot of people talk about process and like, what, do you write a treatment? Do you not write a treatment? And outlining and things like that, everything that you kind of learn in screenwriting 101, or if you take seminars and stuff. And I'm probably not the best. unless it's a mystery. If it's a mystery, I'll outline that. I kind of work backwards and start with I start with the crime. I start with how the crime happened, and then I kind of work backwards in timelines, and especially if it's like something historical. And then I try to be as historically truthful as possible. So I try to figure out the timeline and the people and the characters, and so that I kind of do outline. But then I usually write with I don't get excited about a project. I won't start it unless I have a really solid idea for an opening scene in the first act and how it ends. And then the second act is what I usually struggle with. And as I've talked to other writers, it's been surprising to me how many writers actually also kind of struggle with the second act. And that's kind of, Billy Wilder once said that if there's any problems in a script, it's usually in the first act. And so or if you've got writer's block, that it's probably because you've kind of written yourself into a corner, and but go back to the characters and go back to how the setup is in the first act and make adjustments there, and then things will kind of start changing. It's funny because I on PBS there's that documentary right now about Ernest Hemingway that's airing, and I've only watched the first episode, but it's really interesting. I love Hemingway. It was really interesting. He says something about writer's block or wanting. He's quoted in the documentary as saying, "All I want to do to get started when I start a project is write one true sentence." And I read that before. There's a book on writing and kind of the process of writing. It's a really good book. And I thought about that for a long time. It's like, I just want to write one true sentence. And then he said, after that, it just flows. But he said that after that, once you get that one sentence written on a page, then it's just a matter of writing a second one. And then it's just a matter of writing a third one. And, that's one thing I do. Like, I've talked to so many people that are like, oh, I have this great idea for a movie, but I just haven't written any. I go, well, have you written it? No, no. They're intimidated by the fact that it's, it's like 100 pages or 110 pages or 90 pages. And it's like, you can't think of it that way. Just write a scene. Just write one page. Write it. Write some dialogue. Write what the first scene looks like. Once you do that, then you've got a scene in the can. Then it's kind of like when you're in production. It's like, what do we have to get through our day? We've got 30 shots we got to get done today. Let's get the first one done. Then you only have 29.
And it also takes you, a tenth of your time to get to that first one.
Yeah.
And then the second one and third and fourth, and then, you get going.
I've come up with this thing where it's like, it always feels like such a challenge just to get to that first moment, and I'll just kind of joke on set and be like, I think we just need to hit that big red button. At some point, we just got to hit that button and start. Because then once you get started, it's so funny to if you looked at the end of the day and the
speed of shot,
speed and the number of shots that we're taking per hour, as opposed to that first part of the day.
And I never looked back at a project and been like, oh man, we were cranking through these. I've never thought that.
Yeah.
But everybody has that same experience. It's like all the time that it takes, that you're angsting over, minutia in that first shot. And, by the end of the day, it's like, that looks great. Let's do it. And you know what? It does look great too. It's It's
and how do you bring that attitude to the first shot? While not losing an attention to detail, keeping that attention to detail, but maybe properly understanding, just I guess if I could articulate it better, it'd be easier to do. But just treat it appropriately accordingly with everything else.
part of the process. I mean, it's part of the exciting thing about being in production too. It's like you've got a whole team of people coming together, and people that you haven't necessarily seen in a while, and everyone's excited. And it's but there's also the part of the first shot is you've got to get everybody up to speed, and even if it's just unloading equipment, I mean, that's just kind of it's part of the process. So it's like, don't stress it. Just don't,
You also got to take your afternoon nap, your after lunch nap, and speed back up after that.
Yeah. I mean, it's you catch up, you figure out a way to catch up.
Yeah. Or you're not doing this too long. So those of us who have lasted, we figure out how to catch up. We do have a question here from Carolyn Averill, top fan. I don't know if we can actually make you a top fan on the social networks, but we should. You mentioned starting with the first scene and the ending, or the ending and then going to the first scene. How often do you find the ending changes as you move through the writing process? Do you feel like you hit the nail on the head? This is a two-parter. With endings often, or how much do things wander and come to new conclusions?
Those are good questions. Those are really good questions. The endings, it does change. Sometimes not. It might not appear, not dramatically or in a big way, but I will tweak. I mean, it's so many people when they're starting out writing, it's like it's such a huge mountain to climb to write the first draft. And when you're done, it's like, oh my God, that's awesome. And you should celebrate. And yes, you should celebrate because that's a major accomplishment. But after that, then the hard work, then it's the hard work, because the first as good as it can be and ought to be. So the part of the discipline is going back and rewriting and going back and being really critical about that first draft and going with and attacking everything and rewriting everything. And the best writing is work that's been rewritten once, twice, multiple times. And it does affect the ending, because sometimes you figure out, okay, when there's problems with the story, the problems tend to be like I said earlier, they tend to be in the first act, but those problems, they're like little threads, little tendrils that kind of work their way through. So when you go and make adjustments in that first act, you kind of have to follow those threads and kind of clean things up through the rest of the story. And that does impact the end. But if you've got, the caveat to that is kind of, if you have a strong enough concept or a strong enough story, it doesn't change the end that much. And the two things of a story that people always remember is the opening, the beginning, and the end. So those should be your strong point. I mean, when you think about, you talk about a movie with someone or something that you just saw in the last week, really quick instinctually, unless there's like some really big set, huge set piece in the middle, you usually think about, the setup for the movie, which is in the first act, the inciting incident, and then how it ends.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny too, because I'm thinking, even with ads, commercials, promotions, it's very much the same thing. But the converse, I think, is true too. When somebody doesn't do it right, like Age of Ultron, I still don't know how that movie ends. I've seen it probably 3 or 4 times, and I've probably fallen asleep 3 or 4 times watching it. But I always watch the farmhouse scene, which is only 15 minutes in the theatrical cut. And it's all the Avengers hiding out in the farmhouse with no technology to hide away from the robot who's attacking everything, Ultron. And that I always stay awake for. I always remember, because it's so good. And then afterwards, I found out that that was Joss Whedon's, I don't know, that was his favorite part of the whole movie. And it was 30 minutes long before they cut it down to 15. And so all the robots, all the things that a little Ryan would have been so excited to see as a kid, I get bored by, because there's a lack of story. So with bad execution, the thing I remember is the one thing that was good execution, that farmhouse scene. It sounds like Carolyn says, "Yep, same." Yeah,
Hey,
falling asleep
she'd
during
asked
action scenes.
she'd asked a two-part question. I don't know if I answered both of her questions.
Yeah, kind of more specifically, do you feel like you hit the nail on the head often, and how much do things wander? You kind of mentioned like the thread in the beginning that you have to fix, but what about maybe more specifically the ending? How much do you start with a story and you have the ending, and then you start writing, and then that ending completely changes or moderately changes?
Yeah, I haven't had that happen yet. Um, I had a producer that I was pitching to suggest that, and I was just I was like, no, that's not the story I wanted to tell.
Hmm.
Which is kind of the nice thing about being in the driver's seat. If it's your IP, if it's your project, you get to decide that. So
Mm-hmm.
um,
Have you ever had a conversation like, yeah, we'd like to option this, or we'd like to develop this further, but we got to change the ending? Have you ever come across that?
yeah. Actually, that's one of the reasons it's taken so long to develop Last Indian War, is because um, I have been really, really careful about. I've gotten a lot of interest in the story over the years, but a lot of the producers have wanted to like change the tenor of the story to make it, it's a story about Native American Indian children, and they want to make it more sellable, more marketable,
Mm-hmm.
and have the story centered around a white A-list actor. And I've been real hesitant
Oh,
to make
geez.
those changes. So it's like making sure that you find a team of producers to work with that kind of have the same vision that you do becomes really important.
It seems like almost that's a no-brainer too. Like they're like, well, I don't know, attractive white male lead is going to be very great for this film, and you're like, wait, whoa, whoa, whoa. That that has worked to some degree. However, now we are paying attention to representation. The first time I realized representation was important was when we watched a Disney princess, maybe Frozen or one of the newer ones, where the princess is also the hero of the story, and my girls, who are my older kids, were just loving it, and those were their favorite movies because they could see those heroine as their heroes. And then it got to a point, it was just funny, we watched 3 or 4 of those because those were the ones coming out, and then my boys are like, when can we have stories for us? And I was like, ooh, that's interesting, what do you mean? And they're like, well, there's no boy heroes ever. And I was like, well, you're just in a funny time where, for the last 110 years, it's all been boy heroes. So,
Yeah.
we just happen to be in the time when we started getting really great female heroes. But, that went over their head. And I just understood the representation, and how that matters. And so your story, The Last Indian War, like, it seems like rife for kind of the Hollywood social interest methodology of like, no, this is a great story about a very underprivileged minority and some bad things that happen to them, but maybe some good things that we can take away, or good understandings that we can take away. Like that sounds like a slam dunk. Obviously I'm not a producer putting money behind this, but
Well, it is and it isn't, and it's an interesting dance that's being done in Hollywood right now, and there is a genuine push towards more diverse stories on all levels, from low budget to big budget studio tentpoles. There is a genuine push for diversity, but at the same time, there's the reality
they
of
want to make money.
they want to make money, and there's this balance going on. It's like we want to make money, and we need to we need an A-list anchor, or if we don't, then the budget needs to be at this level, not at this level.
Sure.
And I mean, those become very conversations that are crucial. And the thing with Last Indian War is that it's a big budget historical epic. So to drive that, to drive it on the business side, it does need some kind of A-list anchor attached. And that's
in order to get that budget.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's just a matter, and the pool of people available for that is much smaller. So it takes longer. So I'm not in that pool on a regular basis. It takes, or, I'm working at trying to get into that pool is probably better way to put it. It's taking longer to get that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Carolyn was saying she personally finds stories like this one's so much more interesting. What are these untold experiences that are more unique than your typical journey of the hero with a white dude? And I'll even say like the unsuspecting white dude hero. Big budget historical epic equal words I love.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's so funny because producers will always fall back on what has been successful in the past.
Oh, yeah.
And it's there's a little bit of, you kind of have to understand that, and there's definitely some hypocrisy involved when they talk to you about diversity and wanting diverse stories, and it's manifested itself in some really weird ways. So
Mm-hmm.
I actually had one of the people, so I pitched a year or so ago to an agent at CAA that had read Last Indian War and then wanted to get on the phone and talk. And it was really interesting. And it was I'm assuming from the voice on the phone that it was a much younger.
That's okay. We're in our 30s. We can rag on 20-year-olds. Lost you there for a second. On a great
really
face.
by the story. Yeah,
you're back.
And it was the phone call was with a 20 something young woman, and she asked me outright if I was Native American, and I said no. I kind of joked. I said I'm a middle-aged white guy from Wisconsin, and she told me to my face. She's like, you can't tell this story. I'm like, what? And she's like, it's not authentic. And I'm like, and the first thing that came to mind before I was, and I wasn't smart enough to turn off the governor first. And I said, oh, well, it's too bad Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet because he wasn't Italian. And I said, and then I said, well, I wonder who writes all those really strong Vulcan parts on Star Trek. And that conversation ended really, really quick. And but
I think that was worth it, though. I mean, especially somebody who might not understand it and says that, right? That's
and it's like I get it. I get the political correctness of the authenticity. If you want to tell a story about like urban life in Baltimore, it's really good if you have experience living in Baltimore and have experienced it. I get that. I understand that.
Right.
But the job of a good writer is to be able to write characters that are universal, that everyone can tap into. Mm-hmm. And I was really offended by that. And it's just because I'm a middle-aged white guy doesn't mean that I can't empathize with characters with different backgrounds and be able to hopefully tell their story in a meaningful way. Mm-hmm. And like for Pick a Charlie, kind of going back to up for a Spotlight Award at Fresh Voices for writing one of the best female lead roles for a script this past year. I'm really proud of that. I'm not a woman, but I'm really proud of that. So it's I think if you're a writer, and the flip is too, if you're a woman, you should be able to write strong male characters.
Right.
Men should be able to write strong women characters. If you're a good writer, it doesn't matter. So
right. Yeah, they say write what you know, but it's kind of like, well, the first thing I know is like, the white hero, right? The young man as a hero. Like I want that, or wanted that as a child, so love that. The other thing I know are the other experiences that I have, or the research that I've done, or the communities that I've been a part of. We're working on a lot of Native American training. I wrote a national training on Indigenous peoples in America. I wrote that. I was working with a team, and one of the producers is Native, and I worked with him a little bit and reviewed it all and whatnot. But your point is so cogent, and people don't think that, like, oh, you're not a Native American, you can't write this story. It's like, do you understand what that means for all stories that have been told, including probably other stories that you're producing as well, right? Like that's
It's
that's
like,
where that's where that curve, we have been very politically incorrect. Now we've swung a little too far. Now we got to swing back, and hopefully we kind of level out, and we can be like, okay, inclusion, diversity, yes, not reverse discrimination, or reverse diversity or anything like that. Like, let's make sure we're inclusive and sensical.
there's a Hopi proverb that says, those who tell the stories rule the world. And there's real truth in that that we can't possibly understand other cultures unless we start to find that understanding through stories and through things that are common, and we can and that helps bring people together. And so storytelling becomes really, really crucial for that. But if you wall off, if you don't allow people to explore those stories or to find that commonality, then you're actually, I think, doing a big disfavor. And when you can start having a dialogue with people about, even like, with your writing, if you start having a dialogue with a Native American client about, what should be included, what doesn't be included, or what you want to tell, or that, I mean, that's really beneficial. That's a great conversation to have. And it's a conversation that needs to happen. And you shouldn't be excluded from having that conversation. I mean, you should be part of that conversation, just like the person on the other side of that conversation should be part of it.
Yeah.
I don't know how we went off on a tangent there.
I love this though. Like, this is, this is the kind of thing that I think is most interesting, is just kind of thinking about the philosophy of what we're actually talking about. Because I don't know, it's a crazy world, and we're all trying to do our best. And I think a lot of what works is gumption. There's kind of like, in creative land, we have like good, cheap, and was it quick? Good, cheap, and fast. Pick two. I think that's similar to your, like a skill set. You could be lucky, you can have money, or you can have perseverance, and you can pick two. But I think if you just have perseverance, I think it's worth it as well. Like, just keep going, just keep hitting it. Somebody says, hey, you're Native American, you can't write that. Well, take it to the next person, and then you'll edit it, or you won't, and somebody will notice it, or they won't, and they have, and they are. So we hear that all the time, of people being like, yeah, I shopped this around and I got 39 no's before I got my 40 yes, or my 40th, my first yes. And then we have Stranger Things.
I think what's really revealing is, like, it's very challenging to handle all the, like, diversity and racial tension type problems, and because it requires a lot of empathy, and there's not many people that practice empathy as a daily weekly habit. But we have to try to flip the script to the other side. And I think that starts to reveal truth, because there's probably a lot of people, like, it's very hard as a, like, middle-class white male to try to fight for my right to be able to write a minority role, because it's like, who am I to fight for that right? But if we flip the script and say, well, you can only write roles that are white men because that's what you know, would it be acceptable to tell a black woman that she could only write roles that are black women, or that a Native American writer could only write Native American roles and could not write a white person's role? That starts to really reveal the problem with that argument. Is like, no, that doesn't serve anyone. Like, yeah, we may have a harder time writing in the voice of somebody that we're not, but I can learn and I can draw an experience of just human experience. We've all felt joy, pain, love, hate, like, and so I can then go interview people, and I do research and find out what are the things affecting somebody, and then write those into that storyline. And we've got to be really careful not to do what some of the producers have done to you and are doing, and saying like, you can't write that, because
and I'm not advocating. I mean, it is important that people with different that there be a diverse group of writers at the table in a diverse pool. That's important. It's really, really important to have Black writers and Asian writers and Native writers and gay writers and straight writers. I mean, that is so very, very important to have. But it shouldn't be. We shouldn't ghettoize people to only write what we think they should write. If a really, really talented African American writer, first of all, you're going to write what your experience is. So if it's like if you, middle class white guy, are writing a subject that is foreign to you, but is very common to someone with a diverse background, a different background than you, they're probably going to tell a more true and authentic story. It doesn't mean you can't, but both of those, but if they're both really, really good, compelling stories, they should both be considered. And that's, and it's a balancing act. It's finding that. And I think the pendulum is kind of swinging in one direction to get people to the table. But then when they're at the table, it's like, then now let's, I think once that happens, then the high tide raises for everybody, and let the creative then, come up from that and develop from that cross-pollination.
Yeah, that I love that idea too. Like the high tide raises all boats, or whatever the quote is. And I think we see that a lot more kind of now. Like I feel like a lot more now, and I feel like that in our community here in the Midwest. Like, hey, yeah, that's really cool what you're doing. How'd you do that? Tell us about it. Okay, well, I'm gonna tell you how I did this. Okay, well, let's maybe collaborate on this other thing. Even with the groups in town, like who we compete against, who we throw budgets at the same projects at, talking about, ooh, how'd you do this really cool thing that won your award? Oh, well, let me tell you about it. Because when we can, help each other, it's that idea of the rising tide, and we all get better, and that's, I hope, what we all want.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but it gets back to just writing one true sentence.
Yes.
Nice. Yeah.
Yes.
Oops. So what is that? Sorry, I didn't mean to turn off my lights. It just got very moody in here. Yeah, so let's bring it home. We're almost at 6, and we did have a little bit of trouble, so thank you for sticking with us. We've got a handful of people now. Let us know if you have any last minute questions. But I did kind of want to bring it home. We maybe don't have enough time for 3 Truths and a Lie, but I'm curious. What are you watching these days? What's entertaining you? Give us one recommendation, maybe something that's interesting as a writer to you right now. It doesn't have to be TV, I guess, like a book or something.
I just finished reading the collection of originally unpublished stories by Elmer Leonard, which was really, really good. That's the guy that wrote Get Shorty, and
okay.
I forget what some of the other things he's written. But it was a collection of short stories written in the kind of late 50s, early 60s, which was really good. And then I've been just obsessed with the Netflix show Broadchurch, which is a couple years old,
yeah.
but it's I'm finally getting around to watching it. It's a British crime show about the murder of a young boy in a small town in England, and it is so well done. I mean, it's every character is a potential is a potential murderer. But the characters are, every single one of them is so richly created and so well everything about the show. The acting is amazing, the cinematography is beautiful, the writing is great. I just finished season 2, and there's a third season, but it's I've been obsessed with that show. So
yeah, that's I can echo that as well. I think John got me into that. I'd seen it, and it's funny because like I always gravitate towards like big action, interesting set pieces and cinematography, but it shows like Broadchurch or intimate stories that really, I don't know, I feel like are the best and transformative. Broadchurch is one of those two that feels almost like a book. Like you sit in a scene almost a little too long, and you feel things because of that, or you have a moment with a character, you experience it with them almost a little too long. And so like I remember feeling so many emotions while watching season 1. Season 2 I think is a little slower, and then I think season 3 picks it back up. But I think that's some of the best stuff.
I haven't seen it yet.
that one is if you haven't had a chance to read some of the commentary, it's a really cool experiment in like directing. They hold off information from a lot of the actors. I think there's interviews where some of the actors were saying they didn't know like the answer to that question until like an episode before.
Like the first season, they didn't know who the killer was. So that
when they were working through these scenes, they really felt so that everybody, you know, like was suspicious of everybody else. And some of those scenes too, they apparently in some of the detective scenes, the director, they wouldn't have them go into the scene before into the space before shooting it, so that they would
crime scene,
they'd go in truly looking around for the thing they're supposed to find in a drawer. They knew it was in the drawer, but they're looking around and, you know, able to really immerse themselves into the scenes. There was also a high preference for the first take in that show, which blows my mind. That a lot of the stuff that made the cut were first takes, because they wanted that like rawness of like just experiencing the thing for the first time. So
that's awesome. You know, it has that spontaneous, authentic feel to it too. That's really interesting to know. I didn't see. I haven't read anything about it. It's been in my queue for like 3 or 4 years. I finally got around to watch it, and I was hooked from the very first episode. That's really good to know.
Yeah, so we definitely recommend that as well.
Stanley Kubrick won't be directing any of those episodes if he was alive.
All right. Well, I'm getting a call from my wife, probably wondering where I am for dinner since I'm not at home. The internet was out. That was so much. We had so much trouble with the internet today, but thank you for putting up with everything, Michael. And thank you, viewers, for putting up with it and sticking with us as well. It's always been a pleasure. And I would love to, like our next episode in a few months, I would love to just go all philosophical. I'd love to pick your brain. We didn't get to like the, with Pick a Charlie. I'm very curious, like, your thoughts about the environment. And I love your idea of like taking that social issue and combining it, a more liberal social issue right now, combining it with something that more conservatives would want to watch, a special forces character, putting those together and just seeing what happens. Like, I love that. Maybe we could get more into that stuff.
It's a great story, and it does explore a moral dilemma, and the dilemma is, she's trying to protect the forest for the next generation, to save the planet literally for the next generation, and yet there are thousands of refugees within a couple of miles of her that are freezing to death, that need the wood for winter fuel.
Yeah. I love that. I would love for there
like,
not to be like a clear answer too, maybe we can hear more about it next time, but yeah, I'm fascinated by that and would love to pick your brain more.
Love to. This is fun. Thank you guys.
Yeah, sweet. And maybe next time we'll see how it is. We can maybe do one of these in the studio as well, and just make it all turnkey, and I can have someone else switch it instead of me trying to do this live. I know.
That'd be fun.
Cool, man. Well, yeah, you can always check out Michael over at Spot Filmworks. If you search Michael Graf writer, you can also find like Blacklist and other things that talk about him and talk about his work. You have your representation too.
Graf.
I forget who that is.
Rights.com.
What was that? I think you broke up for a second.
Grafrights.com.
Grafrights.com. Oh yeah. That's your website.
Yeah.
So check it out if you want to hire Michael.
Yeah. Blacklist. I'm on Blacklist. I'm also on Coverfly.
Yep. Saw that one too.
And the ISA, the International Screenwriters Association.
Dude, you're all over, and I hope it's probably movies don't get made fast, but I want to see all these. So we'll definitely have to talk more about Pick a Charlie next time. Also, The Last Indian War. We haven't really talked that much about that one either. This is great. We have an hour and a half conversation, and then I realized we haven't talked about the things that I wanted to talk about. So it'll make for great future episodes. Thank you, Michael, so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. Let's see. Next week, we've got Sarah Cohan. She'll be a part 2 as well, so tune in. That'll be really awesome. The following week, we have Megan McDuffie. I don't know if you remember her, John. She's the one who did the composing for that first You Share piece for the UW.
Okay.
And she's just been kicking ass in YouTube and doing really cool stuff. So she'll be the following week. And then Sarah Noonan will be in 3 weeks on Friday talking about social media, Facebook marketing, fun stuff like that. And hopefully we can philosophize like we did with Michael today, because that's always the most entertaining bit. So yeah, that's what we got. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye.